thank you for thank you so much for your interview. And can you just to introduce yourself?
Yes, well, thanks for inviting me. My name's Paul Seedhouse, and I'm Professor of Educational and Applied Linguistics here in the School of Education, Communication and Language Sciences. And I'm also Director of iLab Learn, which is where we are at the moment, which is a collaboration between this school and School of Computing Science.
So in the Newcastle University official website, I saw the news for a new app called Language Cuisine.
Yes,
so,
Language Cuisine.
Yeah. Can you just introduce this new app to us?
Yes, certainly. It means that you can learn a language while you are cooking at the same time. So you choose a language, you choose a recipe, and the app will speak to you on your mobile phone or your tablet in your own kitchen, and it will speak to you in the foreign language and talk you through cooking a recipe in the foreign language. And if you don't understand what it's saying, then you've got videos and photos to help you.
So you mean one I cooking some food and I can learn the language, is that right?
Yes, exactly.
So how does it comes up this idea?
Okay, well, about 10 years ago, I went to Culture Lab, which is in Newcastle University. One of my students was working on some technology, and I noticed that they had built a kitchen there which was called the Ambient Kitchen. And this was nothing to do with language learning, it was to help people with dementia. So the kitchen speaks to them while they're in their own home and helps them to cook a meal. So when I saw that, I thought this would be ideal for language learning, because when you learn a language, you don't just learn the language, you also learn something about the culture as well. And it helps if you're doing a real task while you are learning. So over about the last 40 years, we've had the development which is called task-based language learning. In other words, the best way to learn a language is by doing something, rather than sitting in the classroom and learning how to put words together into a sentence.
So why you choose the cooking to be as a way to learn languages?
Yes, because there are lots of links between language, culture and cuisine, and that is the case all around the world. And cooking is a task which we do in all cultures and all languages, so it is a universal task.
So you mean the audience maybe not just for the app, but just for the people who want to learn language. Maybe they're not good at cooking, or maybe they're not a foodie. So
yes. So when we did the first project, that was called French Digital Kitchen, we put so that the app is designed so two people use it, and we put people who were good at cooking but not good at language together with people who were good at language but not good at cooking, and so that then helped them. They exchange their skills.
That's right. You mean it? You mean the builder and someone can put the video on the web or in the app, and then some others want to learn how to cook, and at the same time they also want to learn language, so they can watch the video. Is that right?
Well, we put two people together, one good at cooking and one good at the language, at the foreign language, and they work together and they exchange skills. So it's not necessarily for people who like cooking, it's not just for people who like language, but people who are interested in language, culture, cuisine, and also technology, because it's fun to use. So one of the reasons we chose this approach is because in the UK, it's rather difficult to motivate young people to learn foreign languages, right? So we started with what is it that young people are interested in? And they're interested in two things. First of all, technology. How do we know this? Because if you look at every young person, they're looking at their mobile phone all of the time. Also, people are interested in cooking. How do we know this? Because if you turn on a television here, and probably in China as well, you see lots of programs of people cooking. Right? So these are two things that people are interested in, technology and cooking. and we add language to the mix as well, and it's a good learning experience.
So, you just mentioned the two things young people want to enjoy in the daily life. So, in the app, so we can learn the daily language, and if possible, some people, some students or young people, they are trying to learn for their course, maybe else tasks, maybe other professional language. Do you think that's suitable for this app?
It's possible to do that. So you'll have noticed there are two parts to the app. There's the player, where you actually do the cooking, and there's also the authoring tool. In other words, anybody can load a recipe on. So if you're a teacher and you want your students to learn particular words in a recipe, the teacher can then put in a recipe, which means that the students have to learn specific words.
Yeah, so it could be,
Yes.
just the method to give us the chance and the opportunity to do this.
Yes, exactly.
And there are other apps, they combine the games or the other, maybe like Hello Talk,
Yes.
or like the language lift. And what is the strength of this app?
Well, when you do one of those, you can't eat anything at the end.
Yeah.
Right? Here, it's fun. And at the end, you actually can eat the food, and therefore you can learn something about the foreign culture as well. Plus, this is a multi-sensory experience, right? When you're learning a language in the classroom, all you're doing is you're using your eyes and your ears, right? When you're learning in the kitchen, and you are also using your sense of smell and your sense of taste. So in the kitchen, if you're learning in the kitchen, you use all of your five senses. It's a very strong experience.
You mean after we learn the language and then we can share the food together?
Yes, exactly. You can't do that on your average app.
Okay. I noticed that it published in the 2014. There's another. Is the European
Digital kitchen.
Yeah, digital kitchen.
Yes.
So, what is the difference between them?
Yes, for the European Digital Kitchen, well, back then we didn't really have apps, and so what we did was put digital sensors onto everything. So we put digital sensors onto the equipment and onto the food, and so the the kitchen would speak to people, and then it would know what people were doing, because when they moved the fork, then the fork would send a message to the system. Okay, and so we did two projects on that, and at that time we didn't have apps; they weren't available. But now we have apps, so we don't need the digital sensors anymore. We can just use people's phones.
That's right. So, because in my daily life, I cooked it, and I also to find the cookbook. I also just noticed there's a book called the Language Cook ebook. I don't remember the name of it. It published. So I also in my point of view, in my room I also want to cook, and maybe I want to learn language. I will choose the language book to cook the